Thank you. I'd love to share the podium with Uber. So the agenda said we were going to do introductions. We seem to kind of miss that, but I'm going to introduce myself anyway. My name is Christiana Hayashi. I'm the Deputy Director of Taxis and Accessible Services. That's Taxis and Accessible Services for the SFMTA. I'm also here representing the International Association of Transportation Regulators, which is a body of both national and international transportation regulators around the world. And I want to, first of all, let everybody know that this issue is not just San Francisco, not just California, but all over the country, in every jurisdiction: Philadelphia, Miami, Chicago, New York, Boston. These rideshare, Austin was recently hammered by these rideshare services. And we as regulators have tried to put our heads together and come up with rational solutions to this issue that is going to allow the adoption of technology while at the same time preserving all of the values that transportation regulators exist to preserve. So I'm kind of wearing two hats, so I hope nobody gets confused about that. I want to say, first of all, that NOETS is a misnomer. There's nothing new about smartphone dispensation of transportation services. Taxis have been dispensed through smartphones for several years now. Granted, they didn't have a lot of venture capital behind them. Granted, it's been slow to get across the market. The SFMTA is working to promote that, but nevertheless, if 10 years from now I can wiggle my toes and order transportation for hire, that's not going to change the fact that a member of the public is paying to get into a private automobile to enter into a dangerous traffic on the public roadway at all times of the day and night under the care and control of a driver who is a stranger. The idea that the situation is somehow new just because there is a new way of communicating the request for transportation is frankly outrageous. Taxis have used smartphones for years, as I said. The idea that there is some third way to regulate these for-hire transportation providers is frankly offensive to those of us who spend our careers working to protect public safety and public access to the transportation system. We're talking about a highly managed public transportation network that is essential to ensure universal access to door-to-door transportation in an urban environment. There are additional considerations for the environment, such as no one can tell me that if I can earn $10,000 per year with a $2,000 Toyota Corolla, that people will get rid of their cars. People don't like to talk about the fact that this competition will kill our taxi industry. But when this unregulated and illegal competition has devastated the landscape, no one will be left to provide universally accessible door-to-door transportation services to our residents and visitors. Should they be regulated as taxi cabs? Yes. They use a device to measure time and distance for the purpose of measuring a fare. That's called a taximeter, where I come from. In fact, the national bodies that regulate weights and measures, whether you're buying carrots at the grocery store or getting into a taxi, are meeting now in order to understand how to apply a smartphone device for the purpose of for-hire transportation. That process is underway, and until that process is over, the use of a smartphone to measure time and distance for public transportation is simply illegal. These services set fares in a black box context using algorithms that can change and do change at will. They troll the streets for business. They affect congestion and air quality. This would be immediately apparent if anybody were to review their business records for regulatory purposes. It would also be extremely obvious if anybody were able to review these private business records that they are not falling within the rideshare exemption under California state law. These are not work-related trips. These are not incidental to a trip that was already in progress. But, of course, none of that information is available to this body as it considers how to regulate these services because it's in private control without any regulatory oversight. It's also on the record in these proceedings that they have no insurance. The CPUC, by its actions to date, seems to have abdicated its responsibility for public safety and transportation access. What is the solution to this? Regulate these services. I'm going to exclude for a minute the UberX operation that the CPUC itself has just launched by its permission. Uber is a little bit different, but it still has threats that affect the public interest. Most particularly, they set rates of fare. An example, Uber, which has indeed spoken frequently to our mayor's office but has never approached the local regulator about its operations, has requested to become part of the public paratransit service. They want to install paratransit debit card payment systems in Uber limousines. Well, please just imagine a disabled customer paying a publicly subsidized fare that has no regulatory controls. What happens if there's an earthquake? And surge pricing applies. You know, is the disabled passenger going to pay $200 to get home with their groceries, and is a taxpayer going to pay for that? That's the problem with the fare setting issue in the context of Uber in particular. Uber has also approached the city about using our diamond lanes that are reserved for our transit system. Just imagine an uncontrolled number of limousines using our diamond lanes, congesting them, slowing down our public transit system. In short, they want all the benefits. They don't want any of the responsibilities. If you really want to reach a rational result in these proceedings, the very first thing that I think the CPUC has to do is develop a factual record. These workshops are not designed to develop a factual record. I think those of us who spend the next 2 working days sitting in this room will find that we spend a lot of time reiterating the things that we already believe, and there will be no new evidence or information presented. So I really want to encourage the CPUC to develop a factual record that does not depend upon self-interested statements by the parties. So what is the solution? Regulate these services either at the state level or at the local level in the same manner that all for-hire transportation is regulated. Thank you.